Dr. Jessica Hayes wiped sweat from her forehead as she checked the readings on her experimental desert-adapted wheat. The Atacama's merciless sun beat down at 120 degrees Fahrenheit, but she barely noticed anymore. 3 years of working in the world's driest desert had made such conditions routine. Water efficiency up 47% from baseline, she muttered into her recorder, protein content holding steady at. A sonic boom shattered the afternoon silence. Jessica looked up, shielding her eyes against the glare. Something massive and silver was descending from the cloudless Chilean sky. Her first thought was experimental aircraft, but as the object drew closer, its impossible geometry became clear. The ship, because what else could it be, was built in sweeping curves that seemed to fold through dimensions that shouldn't exist. Her heart raced, but years of fieldwork had taught her to stay calm in crisis. She reached for her satellite phone, then paused. The ship was landing. Right here. First contact protocol was about to become very relevant. The vessel touched down with impossible grace, stirring barely a whisper of dust. A seam appeared in its liquid metal surface, and 3 figures emerged. They wore what appeared to be environmental suits, their forms obscured by layers of shimmering material that rippled like oil on water. "Hello," Jessica called out, keeping her hands visible. "I'm Dr. Jessica Hayes, genobiologist. Welcome to Earth." The figures took 3 steps forward before their suits began flashing urgent red warnings. The tallest one made a sound like chimes in distress. Environmental toxicity critical. A voice emerged from one suit, clearly automated translation. Atmosphere corrosive. Temperature beyond survivable parameters. Jessica frowned. The day was hot, sure, but nothing extreme by Earth standards. She watched in bewilderment as the aliens began to stagger, their suits apparently struggling with conditions she found merely uncomfortable. "Your suits are failing," she called out. "Stay calm. I can help." "Danger. Do not." The warning cut off as the tallest alien's suit went dark, its occupant collapsing. Jessica didn't hesitate. She sprinted across the baking ground, reaching the fallen alien in seconds. The other 2 backed away in what seemed like horror as she easily lifted their companion and carried them back to her research station's shade shelter. "By the eternal void," one of them transmitted. "The creature lifts twice its mass in crushing gravity while exposed to Class 9 solar radiation." Jessica efficiently hooked up her shelter's cooling system to compatible ports she found on the alien's suit, improvising adapters from her research equipment. Within minutes, the suit's warnings faded from red to yellow, and its occupant began to stir. "There," she said, offering what she hoped was a reassuring smile. "Crisis managed. Now perhaps we could start over. Would you like some water? Coffee?" The remaining aliens had followed at a careful distance. Their suits were now covered in readings and warnings she couldn't decipher, but their body language screamed tension. "You function in these conditions?" The translator struggled with their apparent disbelief. "Well, yeah," Jessica gestured at her lightweight field clothes. "It's a bit warm today, but nothing serious. This isn't even close to our record temperatures." A rapid exchange in musical tones followed. She caught fragments of translation. Death world conditions. Impossible resilience. Operating without protective fields. Drinks voluntary toxins. The tallest alien, now recovered, addressed her directly. "I am First Speaker Ixel of the Galactic Confederation. We." A pause. "We may have miscalculated our approach to your species." Jessica grinned and pulled a water bottle from her pack. "Well, you're here now." Let's talk properly once you're all stable. Fair warning though, you might want to upgrade those environmental suits. Earth gets a lot more interesting than this. The aliens watched in what she would later learn was horror as she casually drank water that hadn't been purified to sterility, while her body's natural cooling system, sweat, functioned efficiently in conditions their advanced technology struggled to handle. Humanity's introduction to galactic society had begun. It would not go as anyone expected. Marcus "Iron Gut" Rodriguez never planned to become an interstellar celebrity. 8 years as a Force Recon Marine had taught him to expect the unexpected, but nothing prepared him for accidentally terrorizing half the galactic community during what was supposed to be a routine cultural exchange. "And this is a standard human recreational facility," chirped Ambassador Veely, her crystalline form glittering under the gym's lights. She was leading a delegation of Confederation diplomats on a tour of the newly established Earth Embassy station. Marcus was just finishing his morning workout, his tank top soaked with sweat as he racked the weights. The aliens' translators filled the air with startled chimes as they processed the scene. The specimen voluntarily stresses its skeletal structure for entertainment. One diplomat's color shifted to a worried purple. "Just maintaining baseline fitness, sir," Marcus replied, grabbing his water bottle. "Nothing special about today's workout. Had to take it easy since the gravity's only 1.2 g up here." The diplomat's horrified whistling intensified. Baseline. This chamber's gravitational settings were miscalibrated. "We must evacuate before." "Nah, it's fine," Marcus interrupted, taking a long drink. "Bit lighter than Earth normal, actually. Hey, anyone want to try the bench press? I can spot you." The diplomatic feed exploded with untranslatable sounds of distress. "Perhaps," Ambassador Veely interjected quickly, "we should proceed to the dining facility." "Great idea. I'm starving." Marcus grabbed his gym bag, falling in with the group. "Haven't eaten since my morning run. Well, except for my pre-workout supplement." A tall, spindly alien whose nameplate identified them as Chief Biosafety Officer snapped to attention. "You willingly consumed chemical stimulants. Without medical supervision." "Just some coffee and creatine," Marcus shrugged. "Basic stuff." The alien's portable sensors began screaming alerts. The Chief Biosafety Officer's appendages waved in agitation as they scanned Marcus. "Your bloodstream contains levels of caffeine that would be lethal to 12 different species." "Wait till they hear about energy drinks," Marcus muttered to Veely, who made a sound remarkably like a suppressed laugh. In the dining facility, things only escalated. Marcus sat down with his standard post-workout meal, a protein shake, chicken breast, and his favorite ghost pepper hot sauce. He'd just taken his first bite when he realized the entire delegation was frozen in horror. Is the human consuming capsaicin extract? A junior diplomat's voice reached previously unknown octaves, voluntarily. "Oh man, you guys have got to try this," Marcus said, offering the hot sauce. "It's not even the really hot stuff." The footage of what followed went viral across 17 star systems. The sight of a human casually consuming what most species classified as a chemical weapon, while explaining between bites how humans actually grew increasingly tolerant to capsaicin through repeated exposure, violated so many safety protocols that 3 different Confederation regulatory bodies had to be created just to process the incident. The situation reached its peak when Marcus accidentally brushed against a sharp edge, drawing a small cut on his arm. Medical emergency. The Chief Biosafety Officer was practically vibrating. "The specimen has suffered structural damage." "It's just a scratch," Marcus said, grabbing a band-aid from his gym bag. "Look, already stopped bleeding. It'll be healed in a day or two." The revelation that humans could repair tissue damage without medical stasis or regeneration chambers caused the biggest stir yet. The fact that Marcus continued his meal, apparently unconcerned about both his injury and potential bacterial contamination from the air, was too much for several delegates. By day's end, the footage had been viewed by trillions. Confederation social media exploded with tags like #SpaceOrc, #HumanInvasion, and #IronGut. Underground markets for human hot sauce sprang up in 3 sectors, despite official warnings about extremely dangerous chemical compounds. Marcus just shook his head when he heard. "Wait till they see what happens when I introduce them to wasabi," he told Vili, who had become an unexpected ally. "Or better yet, let's show them how humans dance." The integration was proceeding exactly as well as anyone who knew humanity might have expected. Chaos, terror, and an inexplicable amount of interest in hot sauce. Combat medic Kate Patch Morrison had seen her share of impossible situations, but nothing like this. The Confederation's premier medical facility on New Genesis was supposed to be the most sterile environment in the galaxy. Now it was ground zero for what the aliens were calling the perfect plague. "Another 40 cases in Delta Wing," she reported, striding through corridors filled with quarantine fields. Her immune system had already fought off the virus, like every other human exposed to it. Make that 41. The Confederation's chief medical officer, a being of pure energy contained within an environmental suit, flickered in distress. Impossible. Delta Wing's sterilization protocols are absolute. "Yeah," Kate pointed to a wall vent. "Except your air recyclers are spreading it everywhere. Basic disease vector, like the common cold back home." The common cold. The CMO's form dimpled with confusion. "Rhinovirus. Most humans catch it a few times a year growing up." Kate checked her tablet as more alerts flashed. "Actually, that might be why we're immune. The protein shells are similar. The CMO's light show would have triggered seizure warnings on Earth. Your species routinely survives multiple viral infections during development, without genetic optimization or protective fields. We call it building immunity." Kate tried not to sound impatient as another emergency signal blared. "Look, we need to focus. Your perfect immune systems are the problem. They're too specialized, too clean, no adaptability." A crash from the diplomatic wing interrupted them. Kate sprinted toward the sound, her combat instincts kicking in. She found Ambassador Xylith, one of the highest-ranking Confederation officials, collapsed on the floor. His crystalline form was clouding over, a sure sign of critical infection. "No choice," Kate muttered, pulling supplies from her med kit. "Sir, your immunity is completely compromised. I'm going to try something we call aggressive adaptation therapy. It violates about 30 Confederation protocols, but it's that or what you shatter." The CNO's warnings about unsanctioned procedures faded into background noise as Kate worked. She performed similar treatments under artillery fire. Diplomatic objections didn't even register. Using a combination of Earth-derived immune boosters, targeted viral fragments, and what another Marine had once called her Scaridok energy, she forced the ambassador's system to adapt. Hours later, Kylith's crystals began to clear. He was the first Confederation citizen to survive late-stage infection. "Remarkable," he whispered, his universal translator barely functioning. "The therapy, it forced my immune system to evolve within hours. Our scientists said this was impossible." Kate was already packing up to move to her next patient. With respect, sir, your scientists need to stop thinking about perfect solutions and start learning about adaptation. Humanity didn't become resistant to disease by hiding from it. We got strong by surviving it. The news spread faster than the virus. Humans weren't just immune, they had a cure. But it required accepting a fundamental shift in Confederation medical philosophy. Instead of maintaining perfect, sterile environments, species would have to embrace controlled exposure to build natural immunity. The debate reached the Confederation Council within hours. Kate found herself addressing the emergency session, trying to explain concepts that humanity had taken for granted for centuries. Your genetic optimization programmed a single perfect immune response, she explained. But life isn't perfect. It's messy. It evolves. Back on Earth, we used to let kids play in the dirt because exposure to minor pathogens strengthened their immune systems. Yeah, it's primitive, but that primitive approach is saving lives right now. She held up a vial of her modified treatment. This isn't just a cure, it's a choice. Keep chasing perfection and watch it kill you, or accept that true strength comes from overcoming challenges, from being a little bit dirty, a little bit scared, a little bit human. The council chambers erupted in debate. But as the death toll mounted, more and more species began to accept what they called the human protocol. The perfect plague had revealed a perfect truth. In a universe of chaos, adaptability trumped perfection every time. Kate just hoped they learned the lesson before more lives were lost. After all, humanity's greatest strength wasn't their immunity to this virus. It was their ability to learn from it, adapt, and come back stronger. Dr. Jack Harrison stood in his makeshift lab aboard the Confederation Medical Station, staring at a holographic display of cellular interactions. Behind him, a group of alien scientists watched in horror as he casually popped a probiotic supplement. You're deliberately introducing foreign organisms into your digestive system. The lead researcher, a floating mass of tentacles named Dr. Zix 427, wavered in distress. That's nothing, Jack grinned, bringing up new data streams. Wait till you see what I found in samples from a kindergarten playground back in Chicago. Kids are basically walking petri dishes. The aliens' collective shudder made the lab equipment rattle. But that's exactly what we need, Jack continued, expanding a particular data set. Look at this immune response pattern from a 5-year-old who just recovered from chicken pox. See how the system adapts, learns, creates new defense mechanisms. He switched to another display showing the perfect plague's protein structure. Now compare it to the Confederation's optimized immune systems. You've engineered yourselves into a corner, folks. Your bodies only know one response pattern. It's like having an army that only knows one battle plan. Our systems were perfected over thousands of generations, protested Dr. Zix 427, their tentacles coiling defensively. Perfect isn't always better, Jack replied, pulling up another hologram. This is why Kate's emergency treatment worked on the ambassador. It didn't just fight the virus, it forced his immune system to remember how to adapt. He reached into his desk and pulled out a sealed container. The alien scientists recoiled as he opened it. This, he announced proudly, is dirt. Specifically, soil samples from Earth's most biodiverse regions. And in this dirt are thousands of microorganisms that have helped shape human immunity for millennia. You brought contaminated soil into a sterile facility. One of the junior researchers began cycling through warning colors. Exactly. Jack's enthusiasm was undimed, because this contamination is the key to survival. Each challenge our immune systems face makes them stronger, more adaptable. It's not about having perfect defense against one threat. It's about being ready for anything. He brought up a new simulation showing how his proposed treatment would work. We start with controlled exposure to beneficial organisms combined with modified versions of Earth probiotics. Then we introduce gradually stronger challenges, teaching your immune systems how to learn and adapt again. The simulation showed alien cellular structures beginning to respond in new ways, developing varied defense mechanisms. It wasn't as elegant as their engineered responses, but it was far more versatile. It's like exercise, Jack explained, knowing the concept had gained traction since Marcus's gym incident went viral. You don't get stronger by avoiding all stress. You get stronger by pushing your limits safely, recovering, and adapting. Dr. Zix 427's tentacles had stopped their anxious writhing. The concept is primitive, they admitted. But the results are undeniable. The ambassador's enhanced immune system has already fought off 3 different pathogens without additional treatment. Primitive isn't always bad, Jack said, bringing up his final data set. Look at Earth's history. Every plague we survived made us stronger. Every new disease taught our bodies new tricks. We're not perfect, but we're ready for almost anything. He gestured at the dirt sample. This is your future. Not sterile chambers and engineered responses, but controlled exposure and natural adaptation. Yes, it's messier. Yes, it means accepting some discomfort. But it also means survival. The alien scientists huddled together, their various appendages and sensory organs focused on the data. Finally, Dr. Zix 427 spoke. The Confederation Medical Council will need convincing. This challenges 10,000 years of medical doctrine. Jack smiled, reaching for his coffee mug. Then let's convince them. But first, anyone want to try some yogurt? It's full of beneficial bacteria. The resulting chaos nearly shut down the lab's ventilation system. But as Jack watched his alien colleagues cautiously approach the concept of beneficial bacteria, he knew the real revolution was just beginning. Sometimes the best solutions weren't the cleanest or most perfect. They were the ones that taught you how to face whatever came next. The galaxy was about to learn what every human child already knew. A little dirt builds character, and what doesn't kill you really does make you stronger. Former Army Ranger Lisa Havoc Thompson watched the Confederation's combat simulation for exactly 43 seconds before shutting it down. This, she announced to the room full of alien military officials, is why you're losing to the swarm. The Confederation's Supreme Commander, a towering being of crystalline lattices named Arxis 9, shifted in agitation. Our battle algorithms are perfect. Every response optimized, every movement calculated to maximum efficiency. That's the problem. Lisa pulled up footage from the latest swarm attack. You're predictable. The swarm's cybernetic hive mind can calculate your perfect responses before you make them. Watch. The holographic display showed a Confederation defense fleet executing textbook maneuvers against the swarm's biomechanical ships. Every move was precise, coordinated, and completely ineffective as the swarm countered each one. Now watch this. Lisa switched to footage from humanity's first encounter with the swarm just 2 days ago. A small Earth patrol fleet, caught off guard near Jupiter's moons, had engaged the enemy. The alien officials watched in stunned silence as human ships executed what appeared to be pure chaos. Ships fired from impossible angles, used debris as cover, and at one point, a captain deliberately vented their engine plasma to create a makeshift minefield. That's Captain Chen, Lisa grinned. She literally made that up on the spot. Lost her coffee mug in the maneuver too. She's still mad about that. But the formations are completely irregular. One official's crystalline structure was vibrating in distress. There's no tactical pattern. Exactly. Lisa brought up another display. Humans call it controlled chaos. The swarm can't predict what we'll do because half the time we don't know what we'll do until we do it. She started mapping out basic human combat principles. We train for structure, yes, but we also train to improvise, to think on our feet, to use whatever's available. She paused the playback. When that petrol lost their main weapons, they turned their mining lasers into makeshift point defense systems. Not perfect, but good enough to survive. Good enough. The concept seemed to physically pain Orcs 9. Perfect is the enemy of good enough, Lisa quoted. In combat, you don't need perfect. You need to survive and adapt. To demonstrate, she pulled out her combat knife and a ration bar wrapper. Within seconds, she'd fashioned a crude but effective signal reflector. The alien officials recoiled at the casual display of what they considered primitive weaponry. This is what the swarm can't compute, she explained. Human unpredictability. Our ability to function without optimal conditions. Hell, our ability to turn suboptimal conditions into advantages. She brought up new tactical displays. You want to beat the swarm. Stop trying to be perfect. Start being adaptable. Use irregular formations. Create chaos they can't predict. And most importantly, she grinned, let your soldiers think for themselves. Impossible. Another official chimed in. The chaos factor would disrupt all command structures. Would it though? Lisa queued up more footage from the Jupiter engagement. Watch how our ships coordinate even in chaos. We call it commander's intent. Give your forces an objective, trust them to figure out how to achieve it. She stood up, pacing the room with the restless energy that had earned her the call sign Havoc. Your soldiers are capable of more than following programs. They can think, adapt, surprise you. Sure, it's messier than your current system. But it's also harder to predict, harder to counter, and a hell of a lot more effective. The room erupted in multilingual debate. But as the tactical displays continued showing human ships defeating swarm forces through what appeared to be controlled insanity, the tide began to turn. Perhaps, Orcs 9 finally admitted, their crystalline form reflecting the chaotic battle footage, it is time for the Confederation military to embrace imperfection. Lisa smiled, already planning training scenarios that would shatter every combat doctrine the Confederation held dear. Trust me, Supreme Commander. We're going to teach your forces how to fight like humans. The swarm won't know what hit them. She pulled up her proposed training schedule. First lesson. Why sleep deprivation and caffeine are tactical advantages. Who's ready to learn about the art of combat naps? The resulting collective alien horror only made her smile wider. Perfect soldiers were about to learn the power of controlled chaos, and the galaxy would never be the same. This is absolutely insane, Tyler O'Brien announced of his brother Connor, watching alien youth attempting parkour across the pristine spires of New Alexandria, the Confederation's cultural capital. We've created monsters. Correction, Connor grinned, adjusting his camera drone's position. We've created a revolution. Did you see the latest viewer numbers for Living Like a Human? Their reality show had started as a joke. Two adventurous brothers from Colorado teaching aliens about human recreational activities. Now it was the most watched program in Confederation history, despite, or because of, requiring a warning scroll that took up half the screen. Extreme danger. activities performed by QLFID space Orcs. Do not attempt without human supervision. Speaking of which, Tyler checked his notes. Today's episode, Earth-style camping. A group of young aliens, representing 6 different species, waited eagerly nearby. They wore what had become the latest fashion trend. Tactical gear modified for their various physiologies. One crystalline being had even managed to fashion a bandana out of energy fields. Outright, future space orcs. Connor addressed the group. Today we're learning about surviving with minimal technology. First up, making fire. But why not use thermal regulators? A floating cloud of luminescent gas asked. Tyler pulled out matches and kindling. Because sometimes technology fails. Plus, there's something primal about real fire. Humans have gathered around flames for thousands of years. It's in our DNA. DNA retention of combustion appreciation. The aliens began taking notes frantically. Not exactly, Connor laughed. It's more about the experience. The smell of wood smoke, the crackle of flames, the taste of slightly burned marshmallows. Voluntary consumption of carbonized carbohydrates. More frantic noting. The brothers exchanged grins. Every episode went like this. What humans considered basic activities were mind-blowing concepts to species that had engineered away all discomfort centuries ago. Now watch carefully. Tyler demonstrated strike-anywhere matches. This is how humans made fire before we had plasma lighters. The resulting oohs and ahs as the match flared to life were caught perfectly by the camera drone. So was the moment a young crystalline being got so excited they accidentally refracted the firelight into a brief rainbow. Next up, Connor pulled out a tent bag, shelter building. Sometimes you have to create your own safe space instead of relying on environmental fields. But manually, a levitating arachnid-like being wavered uncertainly. Exactly manually. Tyler tossed them a tent pole. Get ready to learn about the joy of reading unclear instructions and discovering you've got the rainfly upside down. What followed was 2 hours of chaos as aliens discovered the unique frustrations and satisfactions of manual labor. The moment when they finally got the tent standing, albeit at a slight angle, produced celebrations that nearly knocked it down again. This is what we mean by human experiences. Connor explained to the camera. It's not about being perfect. It's about trying, failing, trying again, and feeling that satisfaction when you finally succeed. Even if the tent looks like it was assembled by drunk govers, Tyler added helpfully. The episode continued with basic campcraft, each skill more shocking to their alien audience than the last. The concept of trail mix nearly caused a philosophical crisis among beings used to molecularly perfect nutrition. You deliberately mix sweet and salty flavors. The gaseous being had turned a fascinating shade of purple, and add dry fruit for texture. Just wait until they learn about s'mores, Tyler whispered to his brother. But the real breakthrough came during the night portion of filming. As the group sat around the campfire, at a safe distance, determined by each species' heat tolerance, something unexpected happened. The aliens began sharing their own stories. Perhaps we had experiences like this once, the crystalline youth mused, their facets reflecting the flames. Before we decided perfect was better than real. Connor's camera drone caught it all. The firelight, the stories, the moment when beings from across the galaxy remembered what it meant to simply exist without optimization. This is why humans camp, Tyler explained softly. Not just to rough it, but to remember who we are when we strip away all the extra stuff. The episode would break all previous viewing records. More importantly, it sparked a galaxy-wide movement of young aliens deliberately seeking out primitive experiences. They called it returning to roots they never knew they had. The O'Brien brothers had set out to make entertaining television. Instead, they'd helped an entire galaxy remember the value of imperfection. Not bad for a couple of guys from Colorado who just liked showing off Earth's crazy activities. So, Connor checked their shooting schedule. What's next week's episode? Tyler's grin turned wicked. Whitewater rafting. The warning scroll was going to need a bigger font. Ambassador Michael Steel Soul Blackwood stood before the Confederation Council, his scarred hands resting on the ancient podium. 10,000 years of perfect evolution stared back at him through various sensory organs, all waiting for him to justify humanity's growing influence on galactic society. Distinguished council members, he began, his deep voice carrying the weight of Earth's diplomatic hopes. I'm not here to tell you that humanity is perfect. We're not. We're messy, unpredictable, and sometimes we eat spicy food just to prove we can. A ripple of uncomfortable recognition passed through the chamber. Several members had recently attempted to try hot sauce, inspired by the underground Space Orc Challenge movement. But that's exactly why I'm here today, Michael continued. Because perfection isn't the answer anymore. The perfect plague proved it. The swarm proved it. Even your own youth are proving it every time they choose to try something primitive instead of relying on optimization. He gestured to his young aide, Zerl, a crystalline being who had embraced human ways more than most. They wore a modified environmental suit that looked suspiciously like tactical gear from the O'Brien brothers merchandise line. Take Zerl here. 3 days ago, they saved 2 lives when an atmospheric processor failed in the diplomatic wing. Instead of waiting for perfect conditions or optimal solutions, they remembered their human training. Used maintenance tubes that were too narrow for safe passage. Improvised air filters from available materials. Moved in what their species considers crushing gravity. Zerl's crystals flushed with pride-indicating colours as Michael continued. By your standards, everything they did was wrong, dangerous, primitive. But 2 people are alive because sometimes wrong is exactly right. He pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's history. Humanity's greatest achievements didn't come from being perfect. They came from failing, learning, and trying again. We reached the stars not because we waited for perfect technology, but because we were willing to strap ourselves to controlled explosions and hope for the best. The council chamber erupted in multilingual murmurs. Michael pressed on, his voice carrying the passion of someone who had lived what he preached. You engineered away your challenges, made everything safe, controlled, optimal. And it worked, until it didn't. Until you needed to adapt, to think differently, to embrace chaos instead of running from it. He showed footage from recent events. Dr. Hayes' Saving Aliens in the Desert, Kate Morrison's Emergency Medical Innovations, Dr. Harrison playing in dirt, Lisa Thompson's Chaotic Battle Tactics, the O'Brien brothers teaching aliens to make s'mores. This is humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not perfection, but adaptation. Not optimization, but innovation. We're teaching you how to be imperfect again, and that's saving your lives. A council member's voice rang out. But the risks are exactly the point. Michael's fist hit the podium. Life is risk. Growth is risk. Every time a human child falls down and gets back up, they're learning. Every time we try something new and fail, we're growing stronger. He softened his voice. Look at your own children. They're not asking for perfect solutions anymore. They're asking for challenges, for experiences, for the chance to fall down and get back up. The council chamber fell silent as his words sank in. Then Zirl stepped forward, their crystalline form catching the light. Honored council, they spoke in clear tones. I was engineered to be perfect. But perfection didn't save those lives 3 days ago. Human imperfection did. Human chaos did. Human courage did. The silence deepened. Then, slowly, one council member after another began to signal agreement. The vote that followed was unprecedented, the first unanimous decision in Confederation history. The age of perfection is over, the High Council leader announced. The age of adaptation begins. Michael allowed himself a small smile. Humanity hadn't just changed the galaxy's technology or tactics. They changed its soul. As he left the chamber, he heard Zirl humming what sounded suspiciously like an Earth rock song. The revolution wasn't just succeeding, it was getting a soundtrack. Perfect timing, as always, for the perfectly imperfect space orcs of Earth. Commander Rachel Phoenix Martinez stood in the Confederation Academy's graduation hall, casually doing pull-ups on a bar rated for 3G while her mixed species class of cadets filed in. The sight no longer caused panic among the alien students. In fact, several of them had their own modified exercise equipment. Last day, Space Orcs, she announced, dropping to the floor with practiced ease. Time to show the galaxy what humanity's been teaching you. The graduating class was a sight that would have been impossible just 2 decades ago. Crystalline beings wore combat boots alongside floating gas clouds in tactical containment fields. A group of energy manifestations had somehow fashioned their environmental suits to look like leather jackets. Remember your first day? Rachel grinned at the memory. Half of you couldn't believe we'd make you run actual laps instead of using simulation pods. With respect, Commander, a crystalline cadet named Vix chimed in. We couldn't believe a lot of things. Like your insistence on manual weapons drills when neural interfaces exist. Or your strange obsession with what you call gut feelings, added Zara, a being of pure energy who had mastered the human art of eye-rolling despite not having eyes. And now, Rachel challenged, pulling out her old combat knife, the same one she'd used to teach them improvised survival techniques. Now we understand. Vix's crystals pulse with pride. Technology fails. Perfect systems break. But this, they patted their tactical vest, filled with decidedly primitive backup gear. This never stops working. The ceremony that followed was unlike anything the Confederation had seen before. Instead of perfect formations and optimized movements, the graduates demonstrated their mastery of controlled chaos. They ran combat drills that looked like choreographed mayhem, each species adapting human techniques to their unique physiologies. The highlight came during the crisis response demonstration. The simulation threw impossibly bad odds at the team, systems failures, overwhelming enemies, and complete communication breakdown. The old Confederation would have considered it unwinnable. The new graduates didn't even blink. Vix used their crystalline structure to refract energy weapons, something their species had considered undignified before human training. Zara abandoned their perfect energy form to flow like water through enemy lines, a technique they'd learned from watching Earth martial arts. Even the gaseous cadets had mastered the art of using their environment as a weapon, creating controlled turbulence patterns that would have horrified their ancestors. This, Rachel announced to the watching dignitaries, is the future of the Confederation. Not perfect soldiers following perfect protocols, but adaptive warriors who can think, feel, and improvise. She looked out at her graduates with fierce pride. They can fight like humans now, which means they can survive anything. But more importantly, they've learned to live like humans, to embrace challenge instead of running from it, to find strength in their imperfections. As if to prove her point, the Academy's gravity generators chose that moment to fluctuate. The old Confederation would have immediately evacuated. Instead, her graduates smoothly adjusted, their bodies adapting to the changing conditions just as they'd been trained. 20 years ago, Rachel continued, casually shifting her stance as the gravity wobbled, you called us space orcs. Primitive, dangerous, unpredictable. Now look at us. She gestured to where human and alien graduates stood together, each making their species version of a proud grin. We're all space orcs now, and that's exactly what the galaxy needs. A new alert flashed across the Academy's screens, dimensional rifts opening in nearby space, an unknown threat emerging into their reality. Rachel watched as her graduates instantly shifted to combat readiness, their movements a perfect blend of human chaos and alien capabilities. No panic, no waiting for perfect conditions. Just ready, willing, and able to face whatever came next. Well, class, she smiled, checking her tactical gear out of habit. Looks like your final exam just got real. Who's ready to show the universe what space orcs can really do? The roar that answered her came in a dozen different species' voices, but the spirit behind it was pure human. The galaxy had changed forever, and it was about to change again. Perfect timing for an imperfect universe.